was the mightiest empire on Earth, armed with nuclear weapons, feared across continents. And yet, it didn't fall in battle. No bombs, no invasion, just silence. And the red flag lowered over Moscow for the last time. This is the story of how the Soviet Union, the superpower that rivaled America, collapsed without a single shot being fired. Welcome to the Geo Ledger, where we uncover the moments that changed our world forever. In this episode, we journey back to the final years of the Soviet Union, a state that once controlled half the planet, only to crumble from within. How did it all begin? To understand the fall, we must first understand the empire. The Soviet Union was born from revolution, a dream of equality and a world without class. After World War II, it emerged as one of two global superpowers, standing toe-to-toe with the United States. Its scientists launched Sputnik into space. Its armies occupied half of Europe. Its ideology inspired millions. But beneath the image of power, cracks were already forming. The Soviet economy was built on central planning. The government controlled everything: factories, farms, even what people could buy. It worked for a while, especially when the country focused on heavy industry and military production. But by the 1970s, ordinary citizens were struggling to buy basic goods. Shelves were empty. Farmers couldn't produce enough food. The USSR could build nuclear missiles, but not refrigerators that worked. And as the West advanced with technology and free markets, the Soviet model began to suffocate under its own weight. The Cold Wars drained the Soviet economy. The arms race with the United States pushed spending to nearly half of all national resources. Then came Afghanistan, 1979, the Soviet Union's Vietnam, a decade-long war that achieved nothing, cost thousands of lives, and shattered the myth of Soviet invincibility. Meanwhile, the USA, under President Reagan, launched an aggressive economic and military campaign to pressure the Soviets further. By 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev took power, young, idealistic, and determined to save the Soviet system. He introduced two new words to the world: Perestroika, restructuring, to reform the economy; Glasnost, openness, to give people more freedom of speech. But openness unleashed something no leader could control: truth. Citizens began questioning the government, the military, and the Communist Party itself. The Soviet people, for the first time in decades, began to speak freely, and they demanded change. The USSR wasn't one country. It was a union of 15 republics, each with its own language, culture, and identity. As Gorbachev loosened control, nationalist movements spread like wildfire in Lithuania, Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, and beyond. People wanted independence, not reform. And when the Soviet army tried to stop the protests, the world saw the violence live on television. The empire was losing control, not to enemies abroad, but to its own people. By 1991, the situation was chaotic. The Communist Party was split. The economy was collapsing. Then, in August 1991, hardline communists tried a coup to remove Gorbachev. Tanks rolled into Moscow, but people stood in front of them. Led by Boris Yeltsin, protesters defended democracy and defied the old guard. The coup failed, and with it, so did the last chance to save the Soviet Union. On December 25, 1991, the red flag over the Kremlin was lowered, and the USSR was no more. 15 new countries emerged overnight: Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltic states, all suddenly independent. The Cold War was over. The United States stood alone as the world superpower. For millions, it was liberation. For others, it was loss of stability, identity, and pride. A century-old dream had ended, not with a war, but with exhaustion. The Soviet Union didn't fall because it was weak. It fell because it couldn't adapt. When a system stops listening to its people, when leaders fear change more than failure, collapse becomes inevitable. The lesson is timeless. For every nation, every empire, every power that believes it can never fall. The Soviet Union is gone, but its shadow still shapes our world. From Ukraine to Eastern Europe, from NATO to modern Russia, the echoes of that collapse are still being heard today. This was the Geo Ledger, where we turn back time to understand the world we live in now. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because history never truly ends. It only repeats.